All right, so good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those who don't know, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. All October long, we have been focusing on coral reefs, and I will introduce our speakers in just a second for a very, very unique and interesting hangout.
I don't know if that's
they've ever joined us. We had another class join us as I was making the intro. So right now we're joined by 4 classes from across North America. I'm going to give them a chance to do a bit of a shout out. We've got Miss Mayer's Grade 4s in Calgary, Alberta. Hi guys. Hello. The audio's not working, but they can see me. That's good. We've got Miss Barajas Grade 6s in Oxnard, California. Hi guys.
Hi.
We've got Miss Curtin's class pouring in Grade 3s in Anchorage in Alaska.
Everybody say hi.
Hi. And we've got Miss Matsuda's Grade 4-5s in Kamuela, Hawaii. Welcome, guys. Oh. Awesome. Of course, the reason you guys are all here today is for our speakers. So I promised you a very interesting and unique hangout. So today, we are dealing with the intersection of arts and sciences. We're joined by Paulo Maurin, who is with NOAA's Coral Reefs Conservation Program in Hawaii as a program coordinator, and Mike Pye, who's a visualization artist with NOAA as well. So together, they get to work on coming up with neat ways to showcase ocean conservation science and share coral reefs and other things with classrooms like you. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Paulo and Mike, who we can figure out if they've figured out the slideshow. Thank you so much, and take it away, Paulo.
All right, aloha, everybody. This is Paulo Maurin with NOAA Coral Program, and on the other side of the mic, we have...
Hi, this is Mike Pye. I'm a visualization specialist with NOAA Office for Coastal Management.
I'll start the presentation, and it was all working perfectly last week, but just now, for some reason, what you're probably seeing is the presenter's mode, where you see the main slide and the upcoming slide. Is that correct?
Well, right now we see your face, but when you do screen share, we will see those slides, I promise.
Let me do that. Screen share, and we have... Yes.
Yeah. So now
all right.
You're good.
Okay. So with NOAA Coral Program based in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I'll tell you a little bit of what I do, and then we're going to get into a little bit of what Mike does, and we'll give you examples of some of the projects, exciting projects that we are going to be doing. But I wanted to tell you first, at the beginning, when I was in school, I knew for a long time that I wanted to go into the world of environmental education and just work within the ocean world, but I couldn't. My path from where I was to where I wanted to get, I couldn't. That wasn't clear. And what we're doing today, we're showing you maybe an unusual path by which you can get to work in ocean conservation, to get involved in the ocean. It doesn't have to be all marine biologists for you to go and help with the ocean. So what we're going to be highlighting today, and it's wonderful, the ones that want to go into marine biology, and that is perfect. But what we're going to highlight today for all of you is that there are many ways for you to get involved in something that you like. And here at NOAA, basically, the range of products that we create, A, to do what we do, and B, to communicate what we do, are very, very wide. So we're going to be telling you about how we use art and technology to communicate science, and especially marine and coastal science. So I'm going to advance now, and you're probably seeing now the science on the sphere. I don't know how many, maybe you haven't seen one of these before, but it looks an amazing display of Earth. Basically, you get a giant floating herb in the middle of a dark environment. And you can find it at museums around the world. And actually, probably you don't live too far from one of these. So museums have installed what we call the NOAA Science on the Sphere. And it's a wonderful way to teach, to visualize world science, environmental science, and marine science. What we do here, this is a very proud NOAA creation. where we're able to basically project onto the sphere environmental data from all over the world, from satellite data, satellites that are going all around and around the world, picking up all sorts of data from the ocean and the land, and we're able to project it basically real time onto the sphere, and the sphere rotates. So when you walk into one of these exhibits, it feels like you're floating in space looking at Earth, and that is extremely inspiring. The kids, when they see it, they go, wow, and they want to learn more about it. And I think that's the excellent role of how science can be. Science should be able to get that wow factor, wanting to reel you in and learn a little bit more about it. And there are many ways by which we can do that. There are many ways to communicate the main message that we're trying to do. And I'll give you a little bit of a problem that we have along with the solution that we've arrived. Here in the NOAA Coral program, we have $27 million to run our program. And maybe right now in school, $27 million sounds like a lot of money. And you can solve all of the problems with that. But in reality, we have to divide this into 7 areas, right? We have Florida, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, that's in the Atlantic Caribbean. Then on this side, we have Hawaii, American Samoa, Guam, and the Mariana Islands. So when you divide the money into all these places, there's not a whole lot left to do everything that we gotta do. Here in Hawaii alone, we are an archipelagic island chain. So there's many islands here. So there's not enough money or enough people to do what we need to do. So the hope that we do, the solution is that we help people, we recruit people to do a little bit of what we do. So for instance, we have a network of citizen scientists that do water quality monitoring. We have a network of student scientists that go into the waters and look at coral bleaching and report back to us. We have a network of people that do marine debris in the oceans around the world and around the islands. But they only do that only if they know what we're doing. And that only works if we're able to tell our story. And what we're telling you today is how we're using art and technology to tell people our story, and hopefully to inspire some people to say, you know what, coral reefs are important, and I want to do something about it. But that step only happens if you're able to get people to care about what you do. And just showing a graph of telling you, oh, this is the coral distribution around the world, normally is not enough to get people interested. So we came up with art to do that. So what I'm showing you now is a beautiful coral reef poster, actually illustrated by a children's book author. She did an amazing, beautiful book. It's called Over in a Coral Reef Ocean. And she did this out of clay. So these are not painted. There's actually sculptures. And showing you the vibrant world of coral reefs. Maybe another example that I can give you is that this is not a NOAA product, but one that we have here and we have helped display when every time we have an exhibition or we have meetings, we take this. What it's doing, it has a projector on the top along with an Xbox sort of reader on top. And it basically, what it can do, it can calculate how far something is. And if it's very, very far, it puts water. If it's a little bit closer, it makes a mountain. So what you have is a topographic map. And when you move the sand, all of this is sand, with a little shovel like here this little kid is doing, my kid, it automatically adjusts. So you can make a mountain where there was a lake, and suddenly the whole image will shift, and then you see the colors of a mountain. So what it's doing is introducing kids to the world of map making and topography. Normally, it's really hard to get students excited about elevation map of an area. But here, they're playing with sand, and you get to see how elevation changes something. So for instance, here, you can see a couple of lakes that are not connected, but with the shovel, you can basically take the sand out from the bottom, and the lakes will connect. And you have the image that will show you that. And that's really cool. And it gets kids interested then in map making and topography. And here's another example of the latest product we're going to introduce in a little bit. But if all you're seeing from the Africa savanna is something like this from afar, right? We're looking at zebras here, and maybe there's a lion lurking somewhere in there. But if this is all you get to see of the African savanna from really far, it might be hard for you to get to understand the animals, to get you to care about the lions, for you to want to learn more about the zebras. It only matters basically the stuff that we learn. We have to experience it. Then we learn, and then we want to do something about it. So I'll bring it back to corals, given that we're in the International Year of the Reef. Corals are tiny. Overall, they make something huge, right? And when you go to a reef, an aquarium, you see a beautiful reef. But it's hard to know that it's an animal. It's hard to know that it's even alive. It just looks beautiful. You have to get into a microscope to see the actual polyp. And that is a problem, because a polyp is an animal. And it's an animal like us. But how do we teach people that? How do we teach that these things are fragile? Well, we recruited Art, and a very talented graphic designer, Mike Pye, that is going to now tell you the process by which we followed to create a way to get students to connect to coral reefs. So, Mike, now you can share your screen and take it away.
Okay, so hi everyone. So I'm here to tell you guys. You guys can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm here to tell you guys that there are jobs out there that you can have fun and do art, even in the government. And as long as you're passionate, and as long as that you want to do this, and this is something that you're interested in, you can do this. So like Paulo was saying earlier, let me do an introduction. I'm not a scientist by trade. I was trained as a 2D animator, so I did a lot of drawings, animations by hand on a light table, but we transitioned into 3D because that seemed like where the technology and where the art was going, and this helped me get my foot in the door. But what really is important is that you have an interest and have a passion, and you become a lifelong student. You just keep on learning, and this also really show through in your work. So what I have in front of you is the process of how we build something like the 3D coral polyp. A lot of the times we start off with just an idea or concept, and then we start to model things. So this is a software called Maya. It's a pretty expensive software to use professionally, but there's a free version that you can download and use for 3 years if you're a student. So I highly recommend that you guys do that. So this is kind of the finished product. I'm going to do what's called a render. And if you look at it, it's built up of all these little boxes, what we call geometry. But it starts off as something simple as a cube. So I'm just going to show you a cube here. Starts off like this. And if you get an idea, then you can start pulling and playing with the faces and make something. So I'm just going to keep pulling this out. And it's almost like Minecraft. You guys play Minecraft? So we can make something like a really cool shape like this. And we can start to round things out or make it square again and really build something that's fun. So a lot of times our models will start off like this with a cube. And this is how we built the polyp. It started off as a cube. You see all the different faces. I can grab a little vertex right here. I can pull it out the way I want it. I can grab a face here or even an edge and start to tweak this. Now, eventually, what I did was I built one piece and then I started to duplicate it. And you notice how I deleted some of these faces because it'd be easier to just connect it like that until I had something like this. And then at this point, I started to tweak some of these edges and faces. Very simple, and I'm able to turn it if I want and create objects like this until finally I get a polyp. And what we do in movies is after we get a shape like this, we do a render, which just takes really quickly. Oh, I forgot the lights. I'm going to just turn the lights on. Yeah. And do another little quick render, and there you go. You have a polyp. And we're able to duplicate that and add a little animation to it so it spins around slowly. Does a little turnaround pose for us. And this is the process of making something like that. We send this to the 3D printer, and it comes out as a coral polyp. Now, this is just one example of what I do. I mean, coral polyp is fun and it's exciting, but you want to keep that that passion alive, and you want to keep that going. So I'm just going to pull up another example here really quickly. Let's see. Just do the. I think I have at least some Albatross here. This is something for fun for the kids. And let's see. So over here we have another model of the Albatross, another model done exactly the same way as we built that first coral. But we have it rigged up too. So I have this beak. Let's see. And I can open and close it if I want to. And as an animator, this is how we pose the character. I can move his wings. Just kind of curl it in a little bit, pose it a little bit. And then we'll take another render here. Oh, let's open his mouth. And maybe I like it like that. Okay. And I'll render. So we get a photorealistic render, or we can do like a cartoony render. It really depends on what the final outcome is going to be. Yeah, this is just some of the ways that we do this. It's taking a little bit long with inventory. Let's try that again. Oh, I think my video card is choking. Let me just do it myself. Render should be easier. There we go. So this is just a low resolution render. Let's try that again. Hopefully we get something nice. Yeah, but this is generally the process. We do something like that. Maya is just one of the tools we use. We also use Photoshop. This is a model of the Hokulea that we did. That's featured in some of the museum stuff. And yeah, I think if you guys don't have any questions, I'll throw it back to Paulo.
Perfect, Mike. And what I'll do, maybe I'll go back to illustrate how we're using the coral polyp, and then we'll do, maybe if there's a little bit of time, we can show them some of the quick draw movies that you've done, Mike. So if you can cue one of those up.
Okay.
And can you all see my slides?
Right now it's just your screen. And just a note for you guys, we got about 7 minutes. Now we're back to your slides, Paulo. 7 minutes for the Q&A, but yeah, plenty of time, guys. Go for it. Perfect.
So thank you, Mike. While you queue up that quick draw, I'll show you. Mike basically explained the process of sculpting something like a coral polyp. And what we do has been basically a huge success when we take it to aquariums, because it's really showing people, what I tell students, the similarities of and intricacies of the coral polyp. So you can see here, corals are related to anemones, right? But it's hard when I tell students that, oh yeah, coral is like the cousin of an anemone. But it's hard to see that when all you see is something that looks like a rock, and the anemone is something that just moves and is so soft. But maybe if I turn the anemone upside down and we have the up close of a coral model, you start seeing some similarities. They both have a body, they have the tentacles, and in reality, they're very, very similar. Also, what I mentioned is that corals are animals. They're not plants. They do have a symbiotic relationship with a plant, but in essence, they are an animal, much like we are. And we share some basic anatomical structures with them. Corals have tentacles. We have arms. We have a mouth. Corals have a mouth. We have a stomach. Corals have a stomach. We have a skeleton, and a coral has a skeleton. Now, all of these, you get to see it. It was impossible to see when you see the coral as something from afar. But through the magic of animation, we were able to draw this. Now, what we did, we 3D printed the model with a filament that changes color when you put it in hot water. So what we're doing now is that I do a demo that I put it in hot water, I put it in there, it comes out, and it bleaches, it turns white. So now we're able to use a model to talk about coral bleaching and how thermal stress and what is also a coral reef. We're able to show the concept of going from a polyp that is very, very small to a colony to a reef. And we're able to then also print some models using filaments that glow in the dark, well, actually with ultraviolet light, just like corals. So corals glow under ultraviolet light or black light. So what we created, we put a lot of these little corals, polyps together. This is using regular light. And this is using the flashlight, ultraviolet flashlight, and it glows just like the real thing. So here are a few examples of how we've been using these 3D printed coral models to tell people how basically they're alive and they're very close to us and many other things that we're familiar with. And then we're getting people then to care a little bit more, hopefully, at the end of the day, on corals once they see how fragile they can be. And Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you. Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay, yes. So here's just a quick demo of how we did a fast draw. I'll show you a few slides of the Photoshop. This is basically like a storyboard where we go through the images and I'll draw everything by hand, and then even the transitions where the hand is wiping away things. And then I'll show you the actual fast draw here for coral. Let's see. There's actually music that goes along with this, but I don't think it really matters. It doesn't.
We can hum softly.
So there is narration going on right now. You can check it out on YouTube later on. We'll send you guys the link.
Perfect. You can pass it to classes.
And Mike, maybe you can explain how long did it take you to do this one?
This is so a lot of the work is front end loaded. We're gonna have to turn this down just slightly. Trying to hear myself think. Okay, and then so yeah, so the work is front loaded. This one took about maybe six weeks. There's a lot of getting the science right because I'm not the scientist. But they explain it really well, so I make sure I get the concepts correct. And then we'll start to draw, and we'll do a back and forth between the writer and see what kind of visualization he wants.
And here, what I'll say is that just like with a coral polyp, that we're basically making something that is abstract and difficult to see, we're making it even fun to understand. Here, we're talking about coral economy. The video is showing how a coastal community will benefit from having coral reefs. And the idea is that they'll prioritize conservation of the coral reefs because they understand how it benefits, how it does for coastal protection and tourism, how it brings money. So the idea of economy that associated with a coral reef is really maybe a little bit difficult and tedious to understand. You'd have to read a lot of papers trying to get it. But hey, here we can do a 2-minute video, and you're going to understand the basic of it. Just like this, Mike has developed ones for tsunami and storm surge, and I'll give you that example. Storm surge is what happens when a hurricane is coming and it's driving up all the water up the coastline. And many times people understand the concept of a hurricane. Storm surge is actually a little bit more difficult for people to get. So we recruited Mike to develop a video showing how it works. Mike, you got picked up by the media, right? Do you know how many hits did he get in the video that you did on storm surge?
I can't. I think within the first 3 days, it was like 70,000 views. Especially because the hurricane was coming, and people wanted to learn a lot more. But but it's gotten a lot more press since the Weather Channel started making their own visualizations of storm surge. There's that viral one where the reporter is standing in the middle of the water, which is really neat. And just being a part of that and bringing out that awareness is super important. And we're glad to be a part of that.
All right. So I'll turn it over to you, Jesse, to moderate. But hopefully, we've given you enough to start formulating a couple of questions, to start thinking there in the background what questions we want to ask you. But overall, we've shown you there are multiple ways for you to get involved with whatever you care about. In this case, if you care about the marine environment and if you want to work for a science agency, there are many ways by which you can basically assemble your career to make it happen. So, Jesse, back to you.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Paulo. I once drew a stick person in 3rd grade. That was the extent of my artistic talent, but I'm hoping some of our classrooms are a little more inclined today. We will start with Miss Mayer's class in Calgary. If you guys have a question, come on up and take us away.
Anyone have a question? No.
Not yet. Okay, well, we'll get some other questions and see if you guys have any after that. We'll go to Miss Baraja's class. Any questions about art, about the science behind coral reefs? Saw one hand. Come back. Let's go to Ms. Matsuda's class. Have you guys demuted your mic? Do you guys have a question?
We do have a question. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, come on up.
How long does it take to bleach coral?
How long does it take to bleach coral?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, let me. I think. Can you all see me in the video?
We see you right now. Yes. No slideshow. And
okay,
while
so
you're setting up, could you explain what bleaching is to classrooms that might not know?
Yeah. So corals have. They're amazing little animals, but they live in a world, in an ocean that is very, very clear waters. And clear waters indicate that there's not a whole lot to eat in those waters. That's why they're like beautiful. You can see all the way down, great visibility, but not a whole lot of little things for you to eat. So they recruited an algae-like organism called zooxanthellae. So very, very small. It's an algae that lives inside a coral, and it gives the coral the color. What it does, as most plants, they photosynthesize. They get energy from the sun, and they give some of that energy back to the coral. So the coral is able to, it hunts a little bit for little tiny prey, but it also photosynthesizes. So it's an amazing animal that has 2 ways to feed itself. How many ways do we have to feed ourselves? Just one. All we can do is just basically eat through the mouth. That's all we can do. But imagine if we also get energy by just standing in the sun. Wouldn't that be wonderful? That's what corals do. Now, that relationship breaks down when the waters get too hot, and when it goes above a certain temperature, and that changes from area to area, the corals will expel this little tiny algae, and then it stays white. So the question is how long a coral takes to bleach. I guess I'll answer on the real world, on the real ocean, and then on the model itself here. So what I'm doing, I'm creating a little ocean right here. So I put just hot water. Let's see, right here, and hopefully you see this is a polyp.
Yeah.
And it's nice, beautiful, bright blue. And I'm gonna see. We're gonna see if it changes as I put the coral in what would be a very, very warm ocean. Do you see any changes?
Yeah, and more so on the other side. Yeah, there we go.
So this is a healthy coral before the bleaching event. This is a coral that bleached, and here you can see basically I dipped it up to here. So it should look like this. And with a 3D printed coral, it only took a few seconds for it to bleach. In the real world, in the ocean, a coral can stay, normally takes about, the temperatures going above 1 degree centigrade of what they're used to for summer. And after 4 weeks of that, we may start seeing bleaching. And after 8 weeks, 2 months, we may start seeing mortality. So in the ocean, it takes about a month before you see a bleaching event. And we've taken that and put it in just 20 seconds. And you see a bleaching event happening with our model. So we're able to make it a lot quicker on this end. Back to the real coral in the world, if it bleaches and the temperature stays hot after about 2 months, we start seeing some mortality after. But if the temperatures go back to normal, then the coral will basically come back to a beautiful color. The algae will recolonize it, comes back to zooxanthellae, and the coral will be nice and healthy again.
Excellent. All right, guys. Let's go to Miss Carton's class. If you guys have a question.
Yes. Why are the oceans getting hotter? Like leading.
Why are the oceans getting hotter? So we're primarily because we're putting quite a bit of CO2 in the atmosphere, right? We're burning a lot of fossil fuels. We're burning a lot of gas when we drive. Sometimes we're burning the actual forest. And all this, basically, everything that we do for transportation, every time you burn a forest or cut a tree, all that carbon, all that CO2 that is trapped in the in the form of basically petroleum, goes up into the atmosphere. Now that's going to heat it up. And when it heats up the atmosphere, and we hear a lot about it, the summers are getting hotter everywhere, some of that heat goes into the ocean, because the ocean, remember, shares a layer with the atmosphere. So some of the extra heat from the atmosphere goes into the ocean and it starts heating it up more than usual. So oceans always get a little bit hotter in the summer, a little bit cooler in the winter. But when you add all that extra heat that goes into the atmosphere, it starts making the ocean a lot hotter than they used to be. And it starts cascading events down to making them like what we call a heating event, something that lasts for days and days and weeks and weeks. And here at NOAA, we monitor that very closely. We have satellites that go around the Earth. NOAA operates 4 satellites that are going around and just basically taking measurements. And whenever it starts getting a little bit hotter than usual, we start monitoring. And we tell people, hey, your reef over there, it may be bleaching, so you may want to keep an eye on that. But basically, that's why the oceans are getting hotter, because the atmosphere itself is getting hotter because of what we're doing.
Excellent. We get climate change, of course, brought up in almost every one of our hangouts. It's affecting wildlife all over the world. Mike, I want to ask you as an artistic question. So you have expertise in a wide variety of things, obviously. Is there anything you can recommend to kids that are starting now when they're young to learn things, whether it's downloading software, whether it's taking classes? Is there anything you can point people to?
Yeah. So if you're interested in animation, definitely check out this thing called PAP4. It's a silly name. It's a plastic animation paper, and it's the 4th version, but it's freeware. And it used to be a paid version. But it's a great way to start animating and learning about keyframes and how to set up your little cartoons. Photoshop is always great. It can be pricey. Like I said earlier in the presentation, Maya is available to students and educators for free for 3 years. So that's a great way to learn. Really, they have a robust set of tools. It's an industry standard. It's right up there with CAD and Max. So Maya's definitely, that's what you see in the movies. Actually, you see Spider-Man and Transformers. That's all done in Maya.
Oh, we have right here at our school for that.
Any guys. Mike, quick question. You mentioned Minecraft earlier too, and I'm really curious if there's anything else that people can, like, things that people would naturally go to, whether it's 3D printers and libraries, whether it's games. Is there anything that you would, again, guide people to that they might run into on a day-by-day basis?
I always push Minecraft because it's a great way for students not to only understand engineering, but just seeing things and start to visualize things in 3D. Because when they're building these objects, they're hopping on top of these bricks and they're building these great architecture through Minecraft, and they're having fun doing it. So I think that's a great way to start off with kids. And I push it on my kids. But then you can move into software like see, there's like Magica Voxel. It's like a freeware that you can also build little bricks, but it's from almost like a 3/4 hold out perspective. So you're really placing the bricks instead of hopping on them and building it. You're actually you're adding it with the mouse, and you can build all these great sculptures. And then it's also you can export that and print that on a 3D machine. So that's great.
Very cool. Speaking of bricks too, certainly in Canada, whether it's schools or libraries all across the country, Lego has become a really, really big thing. There's robotics, Lego leagues and stuff. So pretty much however you want to create, there's something out there, and there's groups that are working with classrooms to do just that. So if you're interested, please do keep on it. Let's go back to Miss Matsuda's class. If you guys have a second question, come on.
I think they said their questions were already answered.
Cool. Okay. Well, we'll check in with Miss Carton's class, and we can wrap it up from there.
All right, go ahead.
How long does it take for corals to grow?
Corals to which?
To grow.
To grow?
To grow, yeah.
Yeah.
So it actually, excellent question. So it depends on basically what type of coral and where it is, but normally corals grow very, very slowly, maybe like your fingernail. So it grows just a little bit at a time. So let's see here. I have a small coral. If this was a real coral, it probably, so corals can grow maybe a couple of centimeters a year overall. So maybe this much. Some species can grow a little more, like up to this much per year. But overall, they're very, very slow animals. So if this was a typical coral, it might have taken 10 years to reach this size. If this, the blue one, if this was a real coral, it probably would have taken 25 years to reach this size. And this is what's sad. When you see a coral, they can get as big as a car. And those corals can be hundreds of years old. A coral normally, basically, by itself, it never dies. It can keep on growing. So it has this amazing ability to always stay young. So unless something kills it, it's not going to die. Unlike most other animals that, we have a definite lifespan, we can do a lot of things to maybe live a little bit longer. Corals, if nothing kills it, there are corals that have been 1,000 years and they keep growing. And what's sad is that sometimes a single bleaching event in 2 months can kill something that was alive that had been alive for 1,000 years. So they grow very slowly, and I think that's all the more reason for us to be extra careful with them.
We do have a kid waiting in Miss Barra's class. We won't wrap it up there. If you guys have a question, let me demute your mic and go for it.
With the $27 million you said you had, what are you gonna do with it?
Whoa, Twilight Zone, down a well. Okay, let's go for it, Paulo.
Yeah. So $27 million. It sounds like a lot, but I'll show you. I'll give you an example of what we do with that. Many of the corals that we study are really far off. So here in Hawaii, it's an archipelago island, and I don't have a map that I can show you, but you have the islands that are populated, so people can just, if we want to study the corals, we can just go get in the water and dive and see them, and we monitor them. But there are islands that are really far off, called the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands, and I've actually been fortunate enough to go in those islands. It takes 1 week to go on a big boat, 1 week to reach that island. Now we have to basically pay a huge boat to be there, and it takes about $20,000 a day to run this boat. There are 40 people on this boat. There are robots that go underwater. There's labs and everything else. So it's $20,000 a day for us to be able to use the boat and to go to places where there's no people, but we want to study the corals. We want to see, are they doing better? Are they dying? Are they healthy? So a lot of the money that we have goes really quickly when you have to study the corals that are really far off in many places. Also, what do we do? For instance, there's a lot of sediments that go from land when people cut down trees and or we have too many goats eating the all the plants and vegetation, and then suddenly you have so much soil going into the water, killing the coral. Then to fix that, what do you got to do? You got to get rid of the goats. You got to fence the area. You got to plant a lot of plants. It takes a lot of people to do that. So imagine sometimes we have hundreds of people helping to put plants in areas that didn't have that lost all the plants, so we can keep the sediments from reaching the coral. So basically, coral suffer from so many things that when we try to put money to fix the things, it does a little bit of work, but it's not nearly enough.
It's worth noting too, it's been really interesting over the last 2 weeks. For whatever reason, we've been doing this for over 3 years, and only funding questions have come out in the last month and a half or so. It's worth noting that the science budget for Canada and the States is about 33% of the entire budget for the entire country. So $27 million sounds like a lot, but compared to virtually any other thing they're spending money on, it's a very, very small amount for a lot of work that's done all around the world. So gentlemen, what I'll do is I'm going to demute the mics to the classes. So Ms. Mayer's class, Ms. Matsuda's class, Ms. Barra's class, Ms. Spartan's class, if you could join me in saying a thank you to Michael and Paulo, that would be great. So thank you so much, guys.